Welcome to the October 6th, 2018 edition of the BitcoinNews.com Daily Podcast. And today we have a special edition of the podcast where we interview the founder of Bisq and a co-collaborator, Felix. And Bisq is a decentralized platform for trading, which is revolutionizing the crypto space. It's freeing us from regulations of the government and allowing people to trade freely across the entire world. So diving right into the interview. Okay, so Manfred, tell me about Bisq.
I started the project more or less 5 years ago with the motivation to create a decentralized exchange for Bitcoin because it was kind of missing that for a decentralized currency system. There was a lack of decentralized exchange possibilities, and over time more contributors joined the project and was launched 2.5 years ago, more or less, and we've been live since this. In Bisq you can trade Bitcoin against any fiat currency, as well Bitcoin against any alpha or the altcoins which are listed on Bisq, which is quite a lot. And the focus of Bisq is to do this exchange in a privacy protecting way and in a secure way where you don't have to expose your Bitcoin keys to any other trusted third parties. You are always holding your Bitcoin keys in your wallet, and you are not sharing any personal information with any company or with any central server, only with your trading peer, what is required for the trade. So when you do a fiat transfer and you have to send US dollar to the other peer's bank account, you need to know his bank account number and sometimes the name and such information, of course. But Bisq is not collecting and is not aware of this data, is not aware of the trade itself. The trade is really a peer-to-peer transaction between the two traders and nobody else. And Bisq is built around this philosophy in a fully decentralized way. It runs over Tor hidden services, so you have all the privacy and security from the Tor network. And it's a desktop application, so you're downloading it and installing it. That has the advantage to be able to build a really decentralized peer-to-peer network, which would not work in the browser. And
That's extremely interesting. I'm an experienced Bitcoin trader. I used to be a Bitcoin dealer back when it was legal in America. And this sounds like local Bitcoins, but better.
Right, with some differences, because local Bitcoins, for example, is not working in Germany. Why? Because it's a website and it's a company, and therefore they can get an injunction from a German judge or from the tax authorities saying, you cannot work in this country, you have to get a license, you have to whatever. Whereas Bisq is fully decentralized, like Torrent was back in the day. There is no company, there is no central server or central website or anything like that. Each of the users runs the client, and the client is a node in a decentralized network.
That's amazing. So there's no single point of failure. It's kind of like Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly. Bitcoin is basically the blueprint where we want to go. Of course, there's no black and white between decentralized and non-decentralized. It's a scale, and you never get everything perfect. But we are aiming to go as far as possible on the technical side. I think we are already pretty far. On the human resources side, we are still working to find more contributors, to find more developers, to get a higher level of censorship resistance and distribution on that area as well. And for that, we are working on a DAO and a decentralized autonomous organization, which is basically then the organization and funding model for Bisq, and which has some similarities also with the way how Bitcoin works. In Bitcoin, you don't ask anybody when you want to contribute to Bitcoin, you just do the work and make a pull request in the GitHub repository. In Bitcoin, it's just missing a funding model, so nobody gets directly paid for this. Indirectly, most of the developers who have worked already in the early days hopefully could make some money with the rise of the Bitcoin price, but there was no formal or no direct funding model for Bitcoin. And in Bisq, we have the need to have a funding model to find more developers to be able to pay them, and for a really decentralized organization, there are basically no good alternatives. Donations doesn't work well, you don't get enough money, same, or it's a lot of marketing effort, and all the other models like creating a company or a foundation and taking investor money would destroy basically the censorship resistance property. And important is to say it's not an ICO. We have nothing to do with an ICO. We are not selling tokens. We are not asking users for money. Bisq is already working since more than 2 years, and the token is it's an economic vehicle to make the value exchange between the users who are using Bisq, who are consuming the service, and the people who are building it, who are the other developers, people who are contributing to Bisq, translators, anybody who is adding value to the project. To make a value transfer between those two groups possible, we designed this Bisq DAO and the BSQ token, which will be launched at the end of the year.
All right, so you're launching a Bisq token at the end of the year, and I was going to ask first, so Bisq runs on a blockchain, is that correct?
No.
No?
Bisq itself, like it is now, is you only need Bitcoin, so it's not operating its own blockchain. It uses features from Bitcoin, like multi-sig transaction and other security mechanisms, like to add to the transaction a security deposit for both sides to make their trade secure. The trade itself and Bisq, like it is now, has nothing, no requirement to any other blockchain. And the Bisq token, the BSQ token, will be optional, so people can also in future trade on Bisq without buying this token or using this token. It will be a color coin on the Bitcoin blockchain, so it's Bitcoin. It's a color coin on that, and it will be, as said, used to create a funding and organizational model, a governance model, because the BSQ token will be used for voting, for payment for the contributors, and for making important decisions in the project.
So in other words, it will be the first voting system working at scale on the Bitcoin blockchain, right?
Hopefully. In the Bitcoin space, I'm at least not aware of any other projects which are trying to do the same.
Okay, so Bisq has like nodes, like a peer-to-peer torrenting service, but it's not a blockchain, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a peer-to-peer network, similar like the Bitcoin peer-to-peer network. So every node is connecting to other random peers, and the same way is here in Bisq. So your desktop application, what you run, is a node in the network which is connected over Tor hidden services. So it runs as a Tor hidden service, and it's connecting to other nodes in this network. And this peer-to-peer network creates a lot of benefits and of value, and makes a lot of things possible, because with that we have our own network layer where we have privacy and security by default.
So Bisq has an escrow service integrated into it. Can you describe the escrow service?
It has no. The way how the security deposit works in Bisq is that both traders. So when you're creating an offer, you are just publishing this offer in the peer-to-peer network, similar like in local Bitcoin. When you make an advertising there, it's there published on their server. In the Bisq network, it's published in the peer-to-peer network. So every node receives this offer, and when somebody wants to take your offer, he will get he creates a connection to your node, and you get in direct contact with the other peer. The applications, most is happening, of course, automatically, and both traders have to put in a security deposit additional to the trade amount. So when you are the seller of the Bitcoin, you have to put in the amount what you are selling. Let's say it's 1 Bitcoin, and both me as a buyer and you as the seller have to add also a small amount of security deposit, which is required that we both have an incentive that we are following the trade protocol, because in the trade protocol there are some manual steps, because we're interacting with the fiat system, which is unfortunately has not arrived in the 21st century, by, for instance, providing APIs that you can automate the fiat transfer, but that's basically not possible with most banks. And so to your bank account. So I have to go outside of Bisq outside of the system. I have to go to my banking web page, make the transaction, the fiat transaction to your bank account, and then I click in the Bisq application button. I have done the payment, and you received then this message over the peer-to-peer network, and you have to check on your banking web page then when you have received the payment. With some payment methods it's instant or very fast. Other payment methods take a longer time. Unfortunately, we're inheriting all the problems of the fiat of the banking world here, but unfortunately there's no really way around so far. And when you have received the US dollar what I send you to your bank account, you go to the Bisq application again, you click a button there, I've received the money, and with that you are signing a transaction together with, the money first as your amount what you are selling, the 1 Bitcoin plus the security deposit of both of us are stored in a multisig transaction. So we are both creating together a 2 or 3 multisig where we are the key holders and an arbitrator is the third key holder. And when a normal trade where no dispute and no problem happens, then the arbitrator is not needed at all. And at the end, so when you have received the dollar, you are clicking a button, and with this button click, our application are creating this payout transaction from the multisig, because we both have the private keys from the multisig, so we can sign this, and then I receive the Bitcoin what you have sent me, and both get back their security deposit. So this escrow system, there is no third party holding the escrow. It's the blockchain. It's the multisig.
Oh, cool.
Exactly. So it's not, if you're familiar with local Bitcoins, there you're sending them the money. Right. Local Bitcoins is acting as a trusted third party to hold the funds. Here, if you want to be very, very strict, the arbitrator, the Bisq arbitrator, would be a trusted third party because they have one signature, but their intervention is not really necessary because it's a 2 out of 3 multi-sig. So if the buyer and seller are agreeing on everything, there's no way that this transaction can be blocked. They will complete the transaction, they will recover the security deposit, plus it's all very visible and transparent on the blockchain because it is a Bitcoin transaction, publicly visible on the Bitcoin blockchain.
So the Bisq arbitrator comes in when there's a dispute, right?
Yeah, exactly. When there is any problem, which is usually 99% of these disputes are because of usability problems, of technical issues, or because of problems with banks that the transaction take long, as usually, or something like this. And when any user has a problem, he can open a dispute, or when it takes too long and every trade has a certain maximum duration, and after this time the users get displayed a button to open a dispute, and then they have, in the Bisq application there is a chat system implemented which looks basically like any messaging chat like WhatsApp or Skype, and they can securely over the Tor network as well communicate with the arbitrator. The arbitrator need to find out what was going wrong and try to resolve the case. When he has found a solution or who should receive the money, then he will close the case and he with one of the peers make the payout transaction. So the arbitrator only become a part of the interaction when there are problems. When everything goes fine, then the arbitrator is even not aware of the trade. The trade is really a private interaction, and only in those few cases we have more or less, I think, 1 or 2% of the trades end up in arbitration. And
if the buyer and seller agree, there is nobody that can block the transaction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you guys ban PayPal and stuff like that to prevent problems?
Yeah, exactly. We never supported PayPal. We made once a mistake to add Venmo and Cash App, which are basically very similar to PayPal from their chargeback policy. And then we got a few problems with chargebacks, and then we kicked them out again. So payment methods which are very open for doing a bank chargeback to send back the money cannot be supported, because then it's basically insecure when the trade has been closed, and then the Bitcoin buyer asks PayPal to send back the money because he made a mistake, and they are not requiring any evidence, so just doing it, then it cannot be used. It's a completely insecure system.
All right, that's good on you
payments need
guys.
to be final, otherwise it's just too risky.
So do you allow people to trade for cash in person on your platform?
Yeah, we support now face-to-face trade since the latest version, the latest release. So you can meet a person directly anywhere, similar like local Bitcoin face-to-face trade. There are also a few other payment methods which don't require strictly a bank account for both sides, like Hellcash that's used in Spain and in Poland, and I think they want to launch also in the United States. Very interesting payment method where the Bitcoin seller receives the money at the cash machine, so they get just sent a code on their mobile, and with this code they can withdraw the money from a cash machine. They don't need any bank account for such transaction. And then there are also US money postal order and cash deposit. So there are some methods where we try to escape a little bit the full-scale banking scene, but unfortunately it's very limited, and that's all the reason why Bitcoin exists. Where we deal with the fiat side, we see how imperfect and how terrible it is, and the big hope is that in 5 or 10 years there are not too many people anymore who want to go out and in from fiat system, that most people are running their money in Bitcoin, and that's, I think, the interesting stuff with the Bisq DAO, that people get paid then in BSQ, which is basically a cryptocurrency, technically Bitcoin as well. And when it starts more, that people have the opportunity to earn the money in Bitcoin and spend the money in Bitcoin now with Lightning Network, Bitcoin as a payment system will become much, much more interesting again. I think then we are getting closer to the situation that we just can skip this banking world, a little bit like with the fax machines in the 90s. I personally, when I started with internet, there was still a lot of requirement to send some documents with the fax, and I never bought a fax machine because I hated it. It was so terrible. You could do the same with email while scanning it, but in the late 90s it was still difficult. Many, especially
Manfred, banks may still ask you for a fax from time to time.
Yeah, sure, they use it still. they still use mainframes also. I mean, their IT technology from the 70s. Anyway, back to Bisq. There are many reasons why Bisq why we need to work on this, that we help to bring Bitcoin to the destination to be really used as a money system. And I think a decentralized exchange where you protect your privacy is a very crucial element of this.
All right, so is Bisq available in the entire world?
Yeah, basically, yes, as long as you can use any payment method. And I mean, for altcoins, you can use it anywhere. And for any other, so I think in every country of the world there is any kind of bank. So one payment method is national bank transfer. So in any country where you have a national bank transfer, you can use Bisq.
Yeah, let me just add that just because it's available, it doesn't mean it's very practical at the moment. For example, in India, it works. We've tried it. We've had people in India try it. But the offer books, the order books are quite empty because there aren't many traders there. So obviously there's a bit of a chicken and egg problem, but it works. So if you can get 2 or 3 people in India to run Bisq at the same time, it will be working.
Okay, is there any way for governments to stop the Bisq network? Like to ban the IPs or something?
I think it's very difficult on the technical level. I mean, I think it's similar like with Bitcoin. I mean, there are all these problems what we have seen the last years. It's always a gray area and source for conspiracy theories. So you never know exactly who was behind some of these attacks. But of course, those attacks are doable by governmental agencies and more on the social level, on the economic level.
Yeah, but let's be clear. A software attack is would be very impractical for a government right now. Very uneconomical because the user base of Bisq just does not merit that type of attention. What would be a very dangerous form of attack, which could happen, and which we've seen happening in local bitcoins, is for agents to pose as traders and that way try to find who's buying or selling. That would actually be a very significant risk when Bisq grows larger. So in the US, for example, in some states, people have been prosecuted for buying and selling on local bitcoins. Florida, I recall, because they needed to have a MTL, money transmitter license. So I can envision that happening on Bisq. Although it is still much harder to do that on Bisq because it runs over Tor and it protects the privacy quite a lot. It's a lot harder to do that on Bisq than on local bitcoins or any other centralized server. But it would be possible.
An important aspect is here the trade amount on local Bitcoin. I think from those reports it was always very high trade amount, something like $50,000. And on Bisq, we have a limit for every single trade. You can make unlimited trades in parallel, but one trade cannot be more like, depends on your account age, also when you have created your account, but it's between something like $300 at the beginning and then $1,500 at the moment, more or less, with the current Bitcoin price.
Yeah, plus you cannot actually see user data until you make a contract and start a trade with them. So to lose privacy, a hypothetical FBI agent would have to trade with a lot of people, with everyone, to be able to discover everyone.
Yeah. Another aspect is, because we cannot prevent this attack from an undercover agent, you cannot. It's a limitation of the model. You cannot use Bisq with fiat payments where the other peer get your identifying data when Bitcoin is illegal, or when usage of Bisq is illegal, or when you are doing things which would require a license or payment of tax or whatever, and you're not doing it. That's your responsibility. You have to be aware of this, and it's basically a risk or a limitation of the system which cannot be avoided.
On the other hand, Bisq never asks for more personal data to be shared than is absolutely necessary to complete the trade. So, for example, when trading between cryptocurrencies, all you need is a public address, a Bitcoin address or a Monero address. You will not be asked for your name, you will not be asked to open an account, you will not be asked for an email, for anything. Obviously, if you're going to use, you're trading Bitcoin for dollars and you're going to use a bank account to pay, to receive the payments you will need the details of the bank account. But that's only when interacting with fiat, obviously.
All right. How does Bisq protect itself against governments from attacking you guys or Bisq the website? Because I see there's a website. How do you protect that?
Yeah, I think the website is not a big risk, because in the worst case, when it gets shut down or attacked by DDoS or whatever, it's not really, it's informational web page. It's like bitcoin.org. When somebody attacks bitcoin.org, it had not much influence of Bitcoin. And it's the software. The software cannot, there are many people who have the software downloaded and the source code downloaded and forked and cloned. So you cannot stop software, and everybody can run and build it by themselves, at least when they're technically a little bit skilled. So, we are not, we are distributed over many different countries in the world. Some contributors are anonymous, and we are not doing anything illegal. So why they should, first they need to find a very good reason what they should try to put pressure on us. We are doing, at the end, we are doing the things what the government should do, protect the privacy of the users, that they are forcing every exchange or other companies to collect data. That's a completely nightmare at the end for security. Your identity, your digital identity become more and more relevant in the future, and when you are a victim of identity theft, and your identity is then flagged by this abuse from a criminal, you are basically dead in the digital world. You cannot get an account anymore at the bank or any other institutions. You cannot get the loan or whatever because people think you're connected to this criminal who has abused your digital identity. And governments are forcing exchanges to collect all this data and expose the users to this huge risk. And nobody can protect the user data, even not the Pentagon and the NSA, even they get hacked. So, I mean, it's a completely illusion to say, you can keep the data secure. That's not possible. The only way to keep data secure is to not collect them. Then nobody can steal them.
That's a very good
point. That's
point.
what we are doing.
But also from the point of view of Bisq's vulnerability to regulation or to government intervention, it's free and open source software. It's on GitHub. Anyone can clone it. Anyone can fork it. If the European Union suddenly went full fascist and Manfred and myself and every single Bisq collaborator got put in jail, some random dev in India could just fork the project and make their own version of it, or just download the Bisq client from BitTorrent and keep on running it, and nobody's going to be able to. So you can use Bisq in a completely anonymous fashion, and you can also contribute to the Bisq DAO in a completely anonymous fashion.
At the end, it's similar like with Bitcoin. In the beginning, it was very unsure if Bitcoin causes legal risk for the contributors, and some contributors have been anonymous. Over time, it has turned out it would be a terrible collateral damage when the governments start to make software illegal, and it's like free speech. I mean, the government who would start in this direction would basically state that they have turned into fascism. And in some countries, like in Turkey or whatever, it's probably the state already. I don't know, but I think it's a move which governments hopefully don't take light. And I think when we get to such a situation, we have probably bigger problems like Bitcoin or this.
No. But there are countries where that is a fact of life. There's many countries where, and even in those countries, Bisq works. So
yeah, and people are using it. We are in contact with some countries where it's quite dangerous to use Bitcoin. Not so much because of governments, more because of mafia and criminals and so on. And they're still using it. They take more care, they're more anonymous, and they have to be more skilled to not risk their life. But you cannot stop ideas. I mean, it's an idea, it's out of the bottle, and it's like Bitcoin. Yeah, you cannot undo history.
All right, I really appreciate what you guys are doing for the world. Like, I used to be a Bitcoin dealer, like I said, and I witnessed the government just totally smash down the peer-to-peer trading network in the U.S. So yeah, what do you think is the future of decentralized exchanges versus centralized exchanges?
I think, as we see at the moment, it happens all the time. In the past years, it was mainly security breaches. Now it's more that basically every centralized, so any company-based exchange get forced into AML KYC. We've seen it now with Shapeshift, local Bitcoin, and it's just a question of relevance. There are still a few small out, but they are just not under pressure because they are not relevant yet. And I think those people who care about privacy, who care about the core values of Bitcoin, why Bitcoin exists, that Bitcoin is not a PayPal, that Bitcoin is a revolutionary new technology for freedom. Those people understand very well the need for a gateway to the fiat system, as long as the fiat system is still relevant, and that will be for sure the next 5 or 10 years at least. Yeah, those people, I think they are aware that the exchange between Bitcoin and the traditional world is something very important, and that's actually always the point where they put the pressure on. Like with the traditional internet, the internet providers who have the local access to the physical wires, they are basically under full control of governments and so on. Software space is much easier to keep free, but when it comes to the more to the physical space, or in this way, the banks can be seen a little bit like physical in a way because they are so inflexible and old-fashioned. But when you get in touch with the fiat world, this interconnection, this gateway will be probably a main choke point where they put the pressure on and where they try to control Bitcoin, where they try to break anonymity and privacy, and then trace back, unfortunately, the privacy on the Bitcoin, on the blockchain is still pretty bad. There are some developments in the right direction going on, but at the moment it's still very difficult to have privacy on the Bitcoin blockchain when you're technically not very skilled and understand it very well.
But it's very, very easy to make the case for decentralized exchanges, because every single week in the news we have either a privacy breach of a major service leaking like crazy user information. That cannot happen with Bisq because there is no central repository of user information. And every month we have a big Bitcoin exchange collapsing or having to do a haircut to its users because they lost money that wasn't theirs, or being shut down by the government. Just in September we had all the centralized Indian exchanges shutting down because the government came out with some new regulation. We've had similar things happen in China. So it's not hard to make the case for decentralized exchanges. In many places they will be the only options available. So they will grow. It does take time, especially for new people, to understand the importance of censorship resistance, the importance of privacy, and the importance of keeping control of your own private keys, of your own funds. But those three things, eventually every person who's dealt in Bitcoin will know how important each of those things is. So it will happen. As for the more UX side, I expect that Lightning Network is going to help make decentralized exchanges even faster, more frictionless, and easier to use. Hopefully next year we'll be able to do something about integrating Lightning Network into Bisq, right? But for the moment, it's maybe slower to buy and sell on Bisq than it is on a centralized exchange. But if you count the whole process from money in your bank to Bitcoin in your wallet, it's probably faster actually, because you don't have to open and verify an account. It only looks to be faster when you're using a centralized exchange because you don't hold the money, it's in the exchange. So if you include settlement times, decentralized exchanges actually have a big advantage.
Alright, so you're going to integrate submarine swaps, it sounds like?
Well, there's quite a bit of discussion about what could be done. So there's some possibility for atomic swaps, and there's also some possibilities for because the BSQ token is on the Bitcoin blockchain. There's even an easier way to do it, in which one transaction would do an exchange, so it wouldn't even be two transactions. But that's all in the not so far ahead future. But since you're asking about the future of decentralized exchanges, yeah.
Plan for a kind of an off-chain trade protocol that will be based on the Bisq DAO. So our BSQ token have certain features. One feature is that you can use it as a bond, kind of like a security deposit, and both traders can secure their trade then with such a security deposit, and the trade itself can be executed and completely off-chain. You can even trade euro to dollar directly without any cryptocurrency in between, because the security is completely delegated to the DAO, to the Bisq token, to these features, and we don't need to make a 2 or 3 multisig with security deposits there anymore. And so that's basically our rough plan for a new version, for a more flexible and faster and more frictionless version for a new trade protocol.
So you're going to have a decentralized Forex?
I would not go too far at the moment with expectations, because it's still in the very early stages, the ideas. And basically, you can build a lot based on this technology. The basic building blocks are you have a peer-to-peer network where you can securely, privately exchange and connect and interact between different nodes. And you can store data in this network. This is a very strong asset. And then you have, you use cryptography and you use cryptocurrencies for securing the system, for building trust relation, or for delegating the trust problems to these systems. And with that, you can build a lot. It's just there are no limits at the end. It's a little bit like in the early internet. People in the 80s or so, most people could not imagine systems like Twitter and Facebook and whatever is normal today, because it was a little bit too far in the future. But the building blocks were there. The technical building blocks have been there already. And I think with crypto, in the crypto space, we still are in very early days here. That we have a lot of power in our hands, and it takes time to figure out what will work and what are the best solutions, and a lot of experimentation.
Hey Manfred, you know, I was a forex trader for a long time, and the broker's role was a pain. You never knew which ones to trust. So decentralized forex would be something I'd be very interested in.
Yeah, I was once discussing about the idea of a decentralized CFD, or spread betting, contract for difference, because one thing is, Bisq want to serve mainly the people who really want to get in and out of Bitcoin to a fiat, or who really want to hold the fiat. But many traders, they are not interested in holding their Bitcoin or the fiat. They only want to bet or to speculate on the price movement. And for that, you don't need to exchange the asset directly. So it's much more efficient to design it differently, like a bet. Basically, you're betting on the price of the Bitcoin or dollar rate in 1 month or whatever. And such a decentralized CFD system could probably work. I was discussing it in Israel with some developers there a year or 2 years back, and they had pretty far developed ideas, and I never got deep into it because we have too much other things to do, but I think such stuff will be possible in future.
Is there anything else you want to say about Bisq?
We have two very exciting releases planned. The next release, end of this month, will come with a redesign and with the launch of the Bisq of the DAO system on testnet, so people can play around, they can learn more about it. As well, what was the third thing?
Talk about burying the lead. In October, the Bisq DAO is launched on testnet, and before the end of the year on mainnet. That's pretty big news, Manfred.
Yeah, and also APIs we will probably launch with this release, so people, traders or market makers can have more options to use Bisq with trading pods or scripts. And hopefully at the end of the year we are releasing the version 1.0 with the DAO on mainnet, and I think that will bring Bisq to the next level.
All right, well, it's been great talking to you guys, and it's an honor talking to you, and I really appreciate what you're doing for the crypto world.
Yeah,
thanks for everything.
That's all we have for you today on this October 6, 2018 edition of the BitcoinNews.com Daily Podcast. We appreciate the Bisq founder Manfred and co-collaborator Felix for talking to us today and giving us this deep dive into the decentralized Bisq platform which could change the world. Go to BitcoinNews.com 24/7 for the full spectrum of Bitcoin, blockchain, and crypto analysis. Adios, amigos.